Hello, this is Hannah Ross. For my final project in Global Studies 222, The Spanish Eyes, Contributions of Hispanic Culture to World Art, I chose to focus on the human condition as it is seen in art, architecture, and literature. The analysis that I will discuss are aspirations, growth, and self-interest. The artists that will be talked about during this presentation are surreal artist Salvador Dali, modernist architect Oscar Niemeyer, and magical realist author Gabriel Garcia Marquez. In the works of all three men, components of the human condition can be seen. In Dali, we see how humans aspire to break from the constraints of time, as well as how we desire to better ourselves. In Niemeyer, we see how we can only grow with change. Finally, in Marquez, we are faced with the darker side of being human. Salvador Dali was born in May of 1904 in Spain. Dali is known for his eccentric personality, incredible mustache, and being one of the most prominent artists of the Surrealist movement. The landscape of the area from which he grew up and around his home is featured in many of his works. He transformed into a living example of Surrealism by incorporating it into everything that he did. One of Dali's most famous works, The Persistence of Memory, was painted in 1931. The melting clocks featured in the painting have become one of the most iconic images of the Surrealist style. One possible reason for this is because time has been created by the conscious, according to philosophers, and therefore does not truly exist in the realm of the subconscious mind. The core purpose of Surrealism is to delve into the subconscious and to realize what is hidden so that it may be understood. A future remake of this painting shows how Dali portrays the human condition. The Disintegration of the Persistence of Memory was created 30 years after The Persistence of Memory in 1954, and comes from the beginning of Dali's fascination with nuclear physics. Not long after the completion of this painting, Salvador Dali started to leave behind surreal painting to focus more on the darker and technological atomic age. And part of this painting shows the possible self-destruction we face, and in part it reveals our aspirations to better ourselves and desire to break away from the constraints of time. Here, we are able to compare both paintings side by side by Salvador Dali. On the left is The Persistence of Memory, and on the right is The Disintegration of the Persistence of Memory. The evolution of these two paintings can be interpreted as an embodiment of the human condition. From the atomization and separation of all aspects from the first to the second painting, as well as the increased disintegration of the melting clocks. The disintegration of the melting clocks is there to symbolize the increased disintegration of time. The increased fracturing of the melting clocks symbolize how some wish to break away from the constraints of time that rule life, but are just a social construct. These two paintings also show the human race's evolution with technology, and how as a species we continually try to better ourselves. But in the second, it shows the darker side of technology, and how, if we take it too far, we might destroy the world as we know it. Oscar Niemeyer was born in December of 1907 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The majority of his famous buildings reside in his home country, and showcased the architectural style of modernism, which Oscar Niemeyer specialized in. Some of his most revered work comes from a single project that took place from 1956 to 1960, which is the creation of the new capital of Brazil, Brasilia. This city was built in 41 months between the years 1956 and 1960, and it is what Niemeyer envisioned as a utopian city should look like. While the city itself is not that old, the ideal of a central capital has been around for 2 centuries. The president wanted the country to have a new capital that set them entirely apart from all other countries, and that would give them their own identity. Because until that time, the capital had been in Rio de Janeiro, which was housed in the colonial city that was built when the Spanish came, and therefore did not truly embody the life and what it meant to be a person from Brazil. The plain design was created by Lucia Costa, while the buildings were created by Oscar Niemeyer himself. On the left is the Cathedral of Brasilia, which at the top looks almost as if there is a crown, representing both the Catholic Church symbolistically and structurally. And on the top, where it branches out, it's almost as if the cathedral itself is reaching towards heaven. Located by the cathedral in the fuselage is the Brasilia Government Building, which truly epitomizes and showcases the modernist movement with its 2 tall buildings in the center and then 2 almost bowl-shaped creations, one which is right side up and one which is upside down. Niemeyer's use of concrete helps bring to life his vision of a utopia. Niemeyer's signature is the use of white concrete with natural lines to create astounding shapes and awe-inspiring symbols. His buildings embody human condition because though his unique vision, he brought people to see a building as something else and help the country of Brazil as a whole to grow and create its own new and uniquely personal identity. Finally is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Gabriel Garcia Marquez was born in March of 1927 in Colombia. He began his writing career as a journalist, and although he is best known for his popular novels, he was also a very talented in writing of short stories. Gabriel Garcia Marquez wrote Big Mama's Funeral in 1962 and mentions it again in one of his most famous novels, 100 Years of Solitude, after the death of a main character. The character of Big Mama is based off of the cacique, who is meant to symbolize the political boss in the area. Through using her, Marquez not only emphasizes the materialistic tendencies of humans, but also their vanity and corruptness, especially when placed in a seat of power. Magical realism is present in the story, but it is not the main focus. He uses it to grossly exaggerate small details. He discusses the materialism of not only Big Mama, but also her family, when he mentions that her nephew went to look for the notary, hinting that he is only interested in his own inheritance. He also brings up how corrupt life of Big Mama has affected everyone, including veterans who have been waiting for their pensions for 60 years, but Mama had kept to herself, as well as all the dead people who have elected her into her position, yet have somehow been dead for over a century. and have been continuing to keep her in charge. How he discusses the human condition is by revealing how much power Big Mama took for herself, and how after she died, people were only concerned with what she had left for them. By the time her funeral was over, no one really mourned her, and she was mostly forgotten forever, just as when the street sweepers had come to sweep the garbage right after her funeral. And these are the works cited pages of my presentation.